Welcome to the Church Solutions Podcast, brought to you by JSL Solutions. The Church Solutions Podcast is designed to help equip you and your church in the use of technology and other tools and services. And now, here are your hosts, Steve Lacey and Phil Thompson.
Well, hello and welcome to the Church Solutions Podcast.
Hi, I'm Steve Lacey.
And my name is Phil Thompson. We are with JSL Solutions, and we do streaming video, we do mobile apps, we do myflock.com. And this podcast, if you're new to this, is a podcast that's aimed towards churches, church leaders, church volunteers, as well as people who really have a heart for ministry, because that's what we have. And so we talk about tech-related information regarding those categories I just mentioned, but we also talk about other things, helping volunteers, helping pastors, because we have a lot of experience in ministry.
Right, exactly. Helping your church grow, all facets of ministry.
Yeah, we do. So we vary from topic, but today we are going to talk more about a tech-related area. We're going to talk about the Internet Campus Pastor, the job description.
Yes.
You can do a lot with this, and I want to give you a little bit of a preference at the very beginning. We're going to throw out a lot of stuff here, and some of it you might listen to and go, oh my goodness, we can never do all that right now, or my goodness, there's more to this, and you might feel overwhelmed. But keep in mind, this is some of this is something you can kind of put in your back pocket for future things for your church, future things for that person in this area. It could be a volunteer that's helping with your internet campus, could be a paid staff member, could be part-time. But there's a lot of things you can do with this ministry.
Yeah, what's interesting is this job description, like many job descriptions today, didn't exist just a few years ago.
I know.
I mean, Internet Campus Pastor job description is what we're talking about. So this is a role that's come around, I don't know, the past definitely no more than the past 5 years or
right.
so.
Yeah. There's a lot to this, and you can expand on it, and you can do as little as you want or as much as you want. The sky is the limit. So hopefully some of these things we're going to throw out to you will, some light bulbs will go off. And you think, oh, we could be doing that, or maybe we could do that next year. Something like that. So
right.
That's the idea. So, all right, Steve. So one of the things you mentioned even while we were kind of getting ready for this is that most people, when they think about streaming online, they think of it as just kind of like a TV deal.
Yeah, it's a lot of people will put in it's like broadcasting your show on television. And how I look at this is, television I see it as a one-way medium. So you're broadcasting on radio, you're broadcasting on TV. And what we're focusing on is to create a ministry online. In order to have a ministry online, you've got to have a two-way communication where you can interact and talk and chat and pray and do things with the people that are attending your service, just like you do online. So that's why this role has been put in place, to kind of the care and the feeding of those that attend your church online.
And when you created the streamingchurch.tv platform, that's really how you created it years ago.
Yeah, the vision was to create a ministry online, to have this be an extension of your campus. Yeah. We try to create an environment online that would mimic or rival your physical campus with things like when people arrive online, they're greeted and they're announced. So just like when you walk up to a building, you're going to have a greeter, and you have people you can ask where to go, how this thing works, and you've got pastors to pray with and fellow worshipers and to talk with and chat with, and so.
Yeah, so there's a lot of interactivity that's meant to happen, and even on the platform itself, there's links people can click on to give, to connect, social media. The whole, talk to other people that are watching the service at the same time if they want to do that. So lots of great opportunities. Interactivity is the key here. And so as we talk about this internet campus pastor position, whatever you want to call it, web pastor, church online pastor, or even just a church online host, a volunteer, doesn't have to necessarily be a pastor.
Right.
But you want somebody that's obviously familiar with your church and somebody is faithful and has a good understanding of how to relate to people and minister to people. So it doesn't have to be a ordained pastor necessarily.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be a I mean, going the same route, it doesn't have to be a paid position. It can be a paid position.
Right.
Depends on how seriously you want to,
Right.
grow your online campus.
Right. And let's talk a little bit about that part right now, because we've talked about some of the responsibilities of a church online host or whatever in the past, and we can touch on that. But let's talk a little bit about growing this ministry, because it really is designed to be grown, or well, some people groan when they have to deal with this, but it's designed to grow. It's designed to be living.
It is one of the interesting things that we found. And not only is it serve as a ministry for those that want to attend church from home or attend church from far, but it's also an avenue to get people to church. It's a really low barrier to entry to have people check out your church. And so we found that it's a first experience or a first contact with people that are considering your church, and they can get a really good flavor for what the church is about, more so than while listening to a broadcast or watching on TV, because they can interact with the people and get to know some of the people before they actually show up in person.
Yeah, absolutely. So
what's the role? What's one of the main roles of the internet campus pastor?
Well, and again, we're going to expand this a little bit. So what I would consider, and besides the things that you just mentioned, interacting with the people online, if you have a chat platform, which, our company, we give you that option of having a chat platform. But besides connecting with people that are watching online immediately, let's talk a little bit about something that you might consider, and that is that person should be somebody that maybe down the road a ways, if not now, would be somebody that could maybe kind of lead that ministry, the online ministry.
Right. I would see it as much like the pastor is responsible for everything at your physical location. He's ultimately responsible for how the parking lot looks and how the people are trained and how how that whole, I guess, environment is. The online pastor would be responsible for the online environment.
Exactly.
So what that thing looks like, how it behaves, how well it's prepared, and that sort of thing. So that's kind of their domain. They're over that environment.
And working with the volunteers, recruiting volunteers to be involved.
Right.
And again, everybody's going to set things up differently. But
promoting and caring for. There's just it's another little church to itself. That's got some unique characteristics to itself.
Yeah, and you touched on a lot of things here. So let's talk a little bit about that. To do church online, you may need some volunteers to run the cameras, probably, unless you've got automated cameras or just something that's fixed. You probably ought to have somebody to help with your sound, the audio portion of that. And again, you can have as many volunteers kind of monitoring the chat and monitoring the online service.
So there's volunteers both at the church that will enable you to create, your online campus, like you just mentioned, the camera guys and the sound guys and all the tech people there. But there's also the people that can participate within the ministry,
right,
online from their own homes.
That's true. They don't even have to be in the same state.
Right.
The church you attend, the one I used to be a part of, we had a host that was in, I think, Ohio, Pennsylvania area. And, our church is in Arizona.
Right. And he found us online. Do you remember
I can't remember the whole story, but he found us online when we were streaming and just got more involved. We got to know him, actually got to know him and his whole family. He became a part of, we used to do a online small group, believe it or not, which is another area that this church
got to know him so well that I mistook him for somebody at church. Remember that?
Yeah, you did. Yeah. And he was somewhere else. But we were actually doing, I think, the way we got to know him even better was we started doing church online small groups,
right?
Which keep in mind, folks, as we're talking about this kind of job description for a campus pastor, internet campus pastor, it's not just limited to Sunday mornings. You could do small groups online. Most churches have explored the ideas of Bible studies during the week or small groups during the week, and they find it to be a great way for people to connect. You can do that online.
Right.
There's tools
Exactly.
you can use to do that with. And so that person that's kind of in charge of that area of ministry that we're talking about here, they need to think beyond just Sunday mornings or Saturday nights.
Right. Exactly.
For your services. So he was somebody that we kind of connected with, and he's still I think still involved.
He's still involved,
Yeah.
and he took the role very seriously. He wasn't a paid position,
Right.
but he knew all the people at church, even though we've never met him in person. Hey Don, how's it going? And we got to know them. And actually, I think the pastor even presented some video clips as part of the service that he had put together.
We actually did a live deal with him too. We actually, when I was back there with you guys years ago, we did a live feed from him. We finagled it, I think, using Skype and using the online platform, and we actually had him live on the big screens for people to see.
So he was a guest speaker,
it was a short little interview.
Right.
Just like letting people know, hey, this is our guy here, and so people actually got to see him in the auditorium on big screens. So it's kind of fun to do that stuff. Yeah. So again, the sky's the limit, folks. On with this area, you can do a lot of things. I mean, we did this feed using Skype, and we didn't spend a lot of money. We didn't have any really complicated technology. We just used Skype to connect with him using the other stuff.
And it removes some barriers that are in place to getting some volunteers or getting some leadership involved, in that geography is no longer an issue.
Right.
So you can pull in some people from wherever. They don't need to be able to come and go to your church.
Sure. So getting back to the Internet Campus pastor, description, whether paid or volunteer, whatever that might be, we touched on really kind of leading that online team. And I think in my case, when I was doing this at your church, I was also in charge of the website and some other things as well. So you can expand it as much as you want, this job description, or you can limit it, or you can add to it later. So again, we're just throwing this out here to give you ideas. And you mentioned working with volunteers.
Yeah, working with volunteers. That would also include training the volunteers.
Right.
So you kind of set up you're creating a welcoming environment online. So you want to do that as best you can, but part of that extends into training the lay leadership that's going to be, pastoring online to do things like, kind of shake people's hand when they show up, give them a shout out, welcome Chris from, Ohio attending, and so you're establishing some training with these people so that you establish an environment that you want to come across to your guests.
Yeah, absolutely. And that shouldn't be underestimated, because that's very important, training people. And there's resources out there. We can help you with some of this stuff. We're throwing this stuff at you, but you can always contact us, just support at streamingchurch.tv, and we can help you with some resources and
I think this is one of the biggest, it's definitely one of the biggest gripe areas for me, is that even though people are streaming online, there are a lot of ministries that are not actively participating in the ministry that occurs online.
Right.
There'll be, a lot of people, I turned the stream on and then I went off and was doing something else, the rest of the service, and people are showing up and they're not getting, helped and not getting greeted. And
them.
Yeah, it's like nobody's home and they're watching the video. It just reflects poorly on the congregation, and it doesn't take much to get somebody to just or to establish the tone with your regular attenders that are attending online. That, hey, let's welcome each other as we show up each week.
Right.
So
yeah, it is really important, because again, it's all about interactivity. It's not just a one-way deal, but it's a two-way street.
Right. So going beyond just one of the examples of that would be as people attend the service, that you establish some rapport and begin to follow up with them after the service.
Yes, absolutely. You can do that in a lot of different ways. You can create a document. Again, with streamingchurch.tv, I don't mean to keep pushing our product, but I'll push it because we have a good product. But if you have a product that gives you the ability to set up a link or something on your platform that people can click on, They could fill out a connection card type of deal where, if they have a prayer request, they can put that in there.
Right.
They can give you their email address if they feel comfortable doing that. Those kind of things will help you capture some information. Capture's kind of a aggressive word, but
and this parallels what you're going to do at your regular facility. You get people that come and go, and you want to be able to connect with them after the service.
Right.
And so you don't want to be, in their face and obnoxious about it, but you do want to create an environment where if they can provide some information where you can follow up with them, send them a card, thanks for coming, whatever it may have been, you want to do that online as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, you can even do this through a mobile app too. I mean, you can again, another avenue to encourage people to use is if your church has a mobile app, and gee, what do you know? We actually provide something like that, don't we? If you actually stream with us, we actually provide you a mobile app. And so again, just another way to connect with people and use that tool to follow up.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. So again, very important stuff. And these are things you should be thinking about if you're streaming or thinking about doing streaming video in the future. Consider these things down the road, because there's so much more you can do.
Yeah. And not to, beat a broken record, do a broken record over and over here, but there's a lot of parallels with it. If you're doing it in your physical ministry, think about how that would apply to your online ministry as well.
Yeah.
So the next one there that we would talk about would be developing resources for people to take their next steps. Just like when you've got someone that's been coming for, the first time you're going to have an appropriate follow-up. When they've been 2 times, 3 times, 4 times, you're going to have an appropriate follow-up and offer some opportunities and resources for those people depending upon their engagement. So,
right. Yeah, absolutely. So again, guys, food for thought as you're thinking about doing this, or if you're doing streaming right now, there are some things, these are some things you can add to the ministry, and it will enhance what you're trying to do. So, all right. So resources is a good thing. Now, here's something to really consider thinking about. This is something that not every church thinks about this, but I know your pastor thinks about this a lot. In fact, him and I, when I worked under him and worked with the church, we had a lot of discussion, and that is doing some expansion with multi-sites.
Right.
And it really, one of the things we had talked about was, if you've got some people viewing your service, if you've got a handful of people from a different city, or maybe even a different part of town. Tucson's very spread out where we live. There's over 1 million people here, but it's very spread out. And so, if you happen to have a lot of people who like the church and they're watching online, let's say from the east side, your church happened to be on the northwest side, there could be a possibility of actually starting a little, we could call it a branch, or we call it a campus on the northeast, on the east side.
Yeah, and one of the benefits of that is you've got some committed people to your church already that are neighbors with each other, maybe in the same locale. They understand the style and what happens at your your main facility. So they're a great candidate to help, take the ministry, establish a physical multi-site campus at another location.
It really is. And, there are some churches that have done that. I can't tell you anything off the top of my head, but there are some I know for a fact that have done something like that. And I know at your church, Steve, we talked about that. And I'm sure Jeff may still be thinking about that down the road a ways, because he's always thinking about that. So it could be within, if you have a spread out community, or if you've got little towns, close by. I mean, we've got Casa Grande that's north of us, not that far away.
Right.
Green Valley.
And it introduced some, we had some unique problems that arose from this. I don't know if you remember, but early on, we had a group of people watching us in Africa.
Oh, yes.
Do you remember that? So we had
I do remember that. Yeah.
A sizable number of people that would gather around. I don't know if they projected on a screen or how it was, but they sent pictures. Right. Did you see those pictures?
I did. I remember that now. Years ago.
So it was outdoor from what I remember, and they had a banner with our church name on it, and they had, I think it was a projector set up, and so people were attending, our services in Africa. So, and they were working with us to, how do we become a satellite campus, and which created some unique opportunities for us. We're like, who are these people, and what's the, how do we manage them? How do we have them become an affiliate of our ministry? How do we control a bunch of whole new issues that we weren't ready to tackle, but they're good problems to have.
Whatever became of that? It just kind of dropped off.
I think we didn't handle it well, and it went away. So, if we had been prepared and thought through prior to that coming up, we might have had a way to, train the leadership there remotely, and have a way to, because we, all of the stuff that we had that was, geared for that was all on-site related things.
And it just kind of popped up. I mean, it's Africa. It's a whole different continent, and it just popped up on its own. I mean, nobody had anything to do with it from here.
Yeah, no one was in Africa planting a church, or they found us on the internet and really liked what they were participating in, and started their own movement.
Yeah, and so that kind of goes back to resources, what we talked about earlier, and that is, creating some resources for people, not only training, but also, if you're going to possibly have another campus in another part of the world, or even another part of your state.
Right. There's going to be some leadership training that's going to need to go way beyond just the internet campus.
Yeah. Interesting stuff there. And again, as you're listening to this, you might be a volunteer that's really interested in something like this, or you might be a senior pastor, and sometimes some of this stuff can seem overwhelming. So just don't be overwhelmed by the stuff we're throwing at you. Just, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. And that's probably not a good analogy, but you know what I'm saying? How do you tackle something that's huge? Look at just doing one piece at a time. And you'll, before you know it, you'll have some cool things happening. So, all right. So again, as we tackle this deal in a campus pastor job description, that person you should consider that person who has the ability to kind of be the main leader for the online campus, work with volunteers, especially in the online ministries, your website, your streaming, even maybe podcasts.
All right. So how do you think would be a good way to go up and raise up someone that could become either an online host or a campus pastor? There's obviously some unique qualifications, and some churches do it really well, and they're lay leaders. I mean, they're not paid staff, but they do a really good job. What do you think are some of the qualities of a candidate person that would be your online, web host?
Well, when I was working with it more directly than I am now, the first thing I was looking for is somebody that had passion for this kind of a thing. Right. There has to be some passion. There has to be a real desire to, I love the online stuff. I think it's a great tool, and maybe is doing it to some small degree.
Right. So, the passion's a good leading piece, and passion's going to drive some of the other things that you're going to want to see, like consistency and making sure that they're there when they're supposed to be there, and that sort of thing.
So I think that's one of the first things. And then, as you get into this ministry expanding, this area, this job description, as we're kind of calling it here, you're going to have to look at, okay, where are they at in their, their relationship with God? Do they have the ability to lead people? I mean, I know a lot of great people who love God and love the church, but they're not really very gifted in the area of leadership.
Right.
So you do kind of need to look at that. That's starting to get it to the next level.
Right.
If you can't, it's the old saying, if you think, what's the old saying? If you think you're a leader and nobody's following you, you're probably just going for a walk in the park, That's important. I mean, when the stuff that we're talking about here, Steve, is really does come down to leadership.
Right.
And you can develop leaders,
And you can develop leaders even remotely, as we've experienced as well. But I just keep coming back. It parallels, what I want a leader to teach a class.
Right.
And you're going to go through some of the same kind of things. Make sure they're passionate about what they're teaching. that they're someone, that they're a leader that can attract and have followers,
Right.
and lead with conviction. So.
And there are some ways around some of that stuff. You might be a good leader, but not a great public speaker. You might be able to get some of the maybe people in your church that are speakers. Maybe the senior pastor can help you in maybe speaking and in teaching a course or sharing some stuff.
But there's a unique ability that you'll have with the online piece of it, because the spoken word is not primary. It's just how you communicate via chat primarily.
Right.
So you don't need to necessarily have be the most eloquent, or as far as with regard to teaching a class and as you were teaching in person, but online you just need to be able to address people's questions and say the right things.
Right. Yeah. It depends on the whatever dimension you're in at that point. So I think passion and really the ability to lead, and then if you have the passion, what I have found is if you have the passion for something like this, for online, church, for tech stuff, you will tend to have a little more vision in that area if you have a passion for it. So, and because you do need vision, you do need the ability to say, okay, we're gonna do this, but we're gonna take it to the next level. How can we take it to the next level? And so if you're a tech if you've kind of got, again, you don't have to be a techie per se, but you have to kind of have that understanding of where things are going and what you possibly could do.
Right. So, and you're going to want to draw on the resources, both on those that are attending online that may not, physically attend your church, as well as those that do physically attend your church that are not plugged into a leadership role at church.
Right.
So there's, and it's an important area because, as we mentioned earlier, at least for our church and for many other churches, this is the first step for people coming to church.
Yeah.
So it's something you don't want to, discard or not pay the appropriate amount of attention to.
Well, and the stats are showing us, more and more people are online, more and more people have smartphones, mobile devices. People are looking, they're looking for a church. They're going to go online first.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, that's a big part. And again, like you said, you may not be okay. Let me give you a little analogy. Very quickly, because we're running out of time here. So, many years ago, I found myself leading worship. And I'm not really a trained musician. I have a little bit of music training, but very little to carry it myself. So I've got the ability to lead. So I was able to put together a music team, and there's things I couldn't do, but they could do. I can't drum, but I could find a drummer. I could lead. I could kind of train them on how we wanted our services to go music wise. And I think I had some degree of success. And then when I actually found people that were better at it than I was, I stepped away from it because even though I did it for years, I knew this person could take it to the next level. So I think you could even take that analogy and use it towards church online stuff.
Oh yeah. Take someone that's a little bit gifted in that area and
find them and enable them and equip them as best you can. And I've always said this about ministry, and that is, I think I'm always willing to to kind of give my job away to somebody that's got the talent and the ability. It's better than me, because there's always stuff I can do.
Right. Exactly.
And so that, keep it in mind. So we got a couple minutes left here. A couple things I want to encourage you. Some decisions you need to make if you want to take your ministry, your online ministry, to the next level. Consider embracing technology for discipleship, for helping people grow spiritually, connect. It's not just, as you said earlier, it's not just a one-way deal. Embrace technology for that. And then something that's really you got to make some hard decisions for, and that's prioritizing your financial resources to get it to the next level. Your people resources and your financial resources. So you begin to invest in people, which is what we were talking about here, but also invest in your web development, your website, and as we've said before, your church online platform. Invest in that. And again, as you've mentioned all along here, Steve, as we're just about out of time, what you're doing on site, take that to going online. So all the things you do on site, greeting people, training people, ushers, all that stuff.
Right.
Move that over to online.
Right. Apply it online, because the boundaries are gone when you're online, and so your reach is just dramatically increased.
Right. And so really it's an online strategy. We're talking strategy here. You know, you've got a strategy for when you started your church, or maybe as a pastor or a key volunteer. There's a strategy in how you guys do church at your facility, at your site. Incorporate a strategy for online. And when you do that, you're going to see some growth. You're going to see some
results.
All right. So we're out of time. Thanks, Steve, for your input on this stuff. Very valuable.
All right. Great to be here.
All right, folks. So again, if we can help you in any way in this area of ministry or anything else, the way you can contact us is streamingchurch.tv. That's our main website for streaming. But the email is support@streamingchurch.tv. Let us know your thoughts, your questions, and also check us out on iTunes. Look for Church Solutions Podcast on iTunes. We also are on YouTube now, too. You can hear the audio on YouTube. So, folks, have a great day. We appreciate you very much, and we will catch you next time on another edition of Church Solutions Podcast.